Thank you, Sabrina.
Give me a second, John, because I have to do the YouTube.
She took you literally, John.
Yeah. Are you ready to go, Sabrina?
Not yet. Give me 1 second. It's
Hi, Jim.
Hey, how are you?
Good. How are you?
Pretty good. All right, all right. Well, all right, all right, all right.
There we
You
go.
should be all set, John.
I want that shirt.
I got one for you.
Thank you.
That's funny.
Okay, everyone, welcome. Happy New Year. I hope everyone had an enjoyable holiday. I was in bed at 11:30. Couldn't quite make New Year's, but heard it was great. Call this meeting to order at 7:01 p.m. We'll do a roll call with us, Ms. Shanahan, Ms. Smith, Mr. Livingston, Mr. Hubelman, and Mr. Goldstein is with us as well. And myself, John Kites. And then we're going to open this up to public participation. Sabrina, do we have anyone on the call that would like to speak?
I don't believe so that we do, but if anybody wants to speak that's in the attendee list, can you please raise your hand? If you're on the phone, I believe it's *7. It doesn't look like it, John. I think you're all set.
Okay, thank you, Sabrina. Now we'll close public participation and do a little administrative work with the approval of the minutes of December 1st, 2022. Let there be a correction. That should be 2022, not 2023 meeting. I guess we're all that remember to put that 23 in the mix. Anybody have any corrections, deletions, omissions before we call for it? Mr. Livingston?
Yeah, thank you. On page, what is it, page 5, the last paragraph of the line, it says, Mr. Livingston asked why they were not upselling the heavy industrial sites upriver. It's up zoning, not upselling.
Thank you, Mr. Livingston. Anyone else? Before I call for the vote? Okay, seeing none, all in favor of approving the minutes as amended, please raise your hand to signify yes. Oh, Mr. Meek is with us as well. Mr. Meek, are you there with us?
Yeah, I'm an abstention. Can you hear me?
Yes, we hear you. Okay, let the record show Mr. Meek has abstained. And the motion, the minutes pass. Okay, moving on to new business, and that's item A, under transportation, mobility, and parking. And item 1 is authorize the Mayor Harry W. Rilling to execute an amendment to increase the Boston O'Neill contract by $60,000 for additional transportation engineering and related design services for East Wall Street improvements. And account numbers noted. Would someone like to move this item? Thank you, Mr. Livingston. I believe we had, there you are, Jim. How are you, sir?
All right, sir. How are you?
Very well. I believe you'll be speaking to this item.
I will. Happy New Year. So we're kind of excited to move this. So this project we took over from DPW to make sure that when we had a combined Wall Street project, that it would that both projects really coalesced well, and that we had a unified look. In looking at those plans, we changed some of the curb lines to get the curb line to get it in. We also made changes to the street lighting so that we had consistent street lighting through the corridor. And in that, we also found that the traffic signal had not had a single plan update. So we need to get that in there yet. We've advanced the plans to 90%. Which in all our thing is we really have them at 100% and ready for final submission. We answered the last of the comments that came from things, but this is going to be able to move us to that last portion, get the plans done and complete, and we have full expectation that we'll be out to bid in the spring for kicking off this portion. So we will have a very unified corridor, and people will start to see the look of it coming soon. So the two account numbers that are referenced there were for the traffic signal work that needs to occur in the design with the main at Wall intersection, and some roadway design that we're also looking at the one-way circulation with night and high, and if it's the best configuration from a safety perspective. So to analyze that before the final plans are executed.
Thanks, Jim. Any questions? Okay,
Yeah, is the traffic light the one at Main Street?
So it's the one at Main at Wall.
Yep. Okay.
Alright.
Does anyone remember when that was out for a couple of weeks and we had a stop time there? It seemed to flow better. Hopefully, the new pattern will mimic what that did.
That was before my time, Brian, sorry.
I think it was Sandy knocked it out. I think it was when we were out of power for a couple of weeks. They had a 4-way stop there. It just seemed to move a lot smoother. Now it seems like no matter which way you go, you're stuck at that light.
We could take a look at it, but I think we have there's a considerable amount of volume that comes through. I don't know how long it was out for. If it was a further indication, I'll do a little bit more research into it, but I think we made
You're definitely looking at the signal pattern though as part of the project, right?
Yep, yes,
Cool, thanks. That's all. I had.
already, okay.
anybody else? Mr. Killam?
Thank you, Chairman Coyotes. Jim, are we looking at all about the possibility through that whole corridor of an adaptive signal system similar to what we put in through West Avenue?
So we will look at that, in the final configuration of that. The signal is new and will be able to be easily upgraded to adaptive. We're looking at the entire signalization of the corridor. There'd obviously be a new signal at the intersection of West and Wall and Belden. But we will look, we have a grant that we're about to undertake, which will expand the adaptive network along all of West Avenue. So we're seeing, so we're looking at the positive impact that this has really created with us and expanding this further. So in short order, yes, we would be looking at it.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Okay, seeing no other hands, I will now call for a vote. All in favor, please raise your hand to signify yes. And that would be unanimous. Okay, now item 2, bit of an update on the transportation master plan. Mr. Yosak, I believe you're with us this evening. Are you there?
Yes, thank you, Chairman.
My pleasure. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to everyone there. Early last, we had a public meeting on the draft presentation of the transportation master plan. I'd like to fill you in on that and what we're looking at next steps. So basically, the master plan will set the city's investment in its transportation system over the next 10 to 20 years. And what we presented with last month was a culmination of an 18-month update that started to look from the old transportation master plan updating it. So working with a consultant, FHI Studio, we reviewed the previous transportation plans for throughout the city, and worked with a technical advisory group comprised of state, regional, and local staff and key stakeholders and the Norwalk community. And together we kind of reviewed the current mobility issues in the city and look for opportunities to improve on them. We had various outreach efforts, meeting with local neighborhood groups, community service groups, the transit district, the Chamber of Commerce, various city, state, and regional staff and officials, the Bike Walk Commission, and the public in general to understand their perspectives and needs for transportation mobility issues and opportunities within the city. FHI Studio to gain additional insight, they set up a online survey and also manned an informational booth at the NICE Festival last summer. And through this, they generated over 1,100 responses from all parts of the city and more than 750 locations of interest that they looked at. And they used this to map out the main goals of the plan, and found several key areas of need. Improved bicycle pedestrian access and safety was one of them. You know, subcategories that are like a lack of dedicated bike lanes and facilities, fear of bike from bicyclists, of speeding drivers, or and from the pedestrians, the difficulty of walking some of our sidewalks because of missing connections or bad conditions, or you know, other issues with our sidewalks. So we're working to improve on those, and those are identified in the plan. Better transit access and modernization. So there's a desire for more direct routes than right now. Everything goes through a Pulse Point, and it's very difficult sometimes to get around the city on buses. So we'll be working with the district to try to see if there's a better way of resolving that. You know, there's difficulty in reaching some of the bus stops. Some of the bus stops are in areas where there's no sidewalks or no crosswalks. You know, some prime examples are on Connecticut Avenue, where you know, you have a lot of shopping centers that people need to get to by bus, and it's very difficult at some of them to maneuver through them. So we're, you know, in the plan, identify some of those areas. Also would like to look at you know, restricting truck access in certain neighborhoods. We get a lot of truck traffic on residential streets, and try to, you know, reduce the truck noise, and also some of our roads have low bridges, and we get problems with trucks getting there stuck under bridges. So we're looking at that in the plan. We're also looking at traffic mitigation and safety. Probably always hear all the time speeding and aggressive drivers. They seem to have really taken off lately with COVID. Sometimes there's poor visibility at certain intersections, whether there's bushes or walls. So trying to improve you know, visibility at these intersections is something we'll be looking at. And then drop off at schools are always a common concern. You have a lot of parents, a lot of activities. So we're looking at trying to improve some of those conditions and working with a lot of stakeholders. And lastly, like in the plan, we noticed that there's you know, issues with parking and wayfinding throughout the city. So and parking that overflows into residential neighborhoods, and then our pricing and our policies may not be in tune with the demand. So we'll be looking at those throughout the plan as well. And so to accomplish all this stuff, they've created a toolbox approach with these various categories of walking, bicycling, transit and freight, and traffic and safety, and then parking. And through this toolbox, we're able to take a problem and then identify potential funding sources, potential opportunities out there, which is very, very valuable to this plan. And all this is being looked at through a you know, an equity and environmental justice mindset, resilient safety and environment and technology. And lastly, we're trying to make this, you know, making transportation choices of turning this into 15-minute city. So wherever you want to get, you know, through whatever type of transportation you want to use, our goals is that you have those businesses and you know, entertainment facilities or whatever within that 15 minutes that you don't really have. So trying to keep traffic out, trying to help keep traffic off the street and maybe make it walkable so you can walk to the neighborhood grocery store rather than take your car, across town, kind of helps on that. So lastly, in the plan, we developed some concept plans that provide some funding opportunities and early action or long-term activities. So three of the items I identified were the Main Avenue corridor, basically from Burnell Boulevard up to New Canaan Avenue. We're applying for a large-scale grant for that area to create a new streetscape, new lighting, and improve the signals and transportation through that area. So that's a big dollar ask, and there are grant funds out there for it. So we are looking at that, and so we had prepared a concept plan, which gets us our foot in the door and gets us in line to provide us with a better opportunity of paying some of these grants. The previous transportation master plan, we were able to use those concept plans to leverage over almost $60 million in grant opportunities, and we're hoping for the same with this. Also, we're looking at the Calf Pasture Beach Road, turning that into a bike lane, and I think you have seen plans of this in the past, so won't belabor that any. And then we're also looking at North Main Street and Martin Luther King. Right now, you cannot make a left turn there, so we're looking at maybe some ways of creating a left turn lane there, so you can get back and not be detoured several blocks out of the way to get to return to that area if you need something. And then lastly, we have developed some sidewalk plans for Riverside Avenue, Linden Street, and George Avenue. And with that, if there's any questions from anybody, I'd be happy to help answer them.
Thank you, Mike. Both you and Jim have got a lot going on right now, and you've done a fantastic job with obtaining grants. Something that I think we lacked in the past, and we're definitely making up for it now. Any questions for either Mike or Jim? No? Okay. Well, thank you, Mike, and we look forward to future updates, and Jim as well. I know you've got plenty going on, and I believe you're going to be presenting other items for this committee in the near future.
And the plan is online on the Norwalk Tomorrow site if anybody wants to look at it. It's very interactive and I think easy to view and understand.
Thank you, Mike. Okay, now we're moving on to our last item. We have a very short agenda this evening, but don't expect the same the next meeting. And that's business development and tourism, and that is a review of the Arts and Cultural District proposal and approval process. And Sabrina, you will be presenting to us this evening, correct?
Yes, I will. And I have a short presentation, and then I can take questions after the fact. So here, can you guys all see that?
Yes, ma'am.
Alrighty. So we're going to go over the goals of an arts and cultural district and also kind of the goals of the city that are laid out in the POCD, which we're trying to meet with establishing this arts and cultural district, and a couple other projects that you'll see and have seen in the capital budget requests from the business development and tourism side of the house. And then we'll go over the Arts Commission current model, what the proposed model for the arts and cultural district is and how it meets the state statute. And then we'll compare those two models, then give you the proposed geography for the actual arts and cultural district. And then the next steps, if we would like to move forward, what we would go, how we would go and do that. So the goal is to preserve and promote our historic and arts and cultural assets in the city, and that's our POCD Chapter 6 goal. That includes a multitude of things, one of them being to actually establish an arts and cultural district, another being creating an arts and cultural plan, which has a request in the budget as well, in the upcoming budget, and has in the past, and also doing an arts inventory, which we've spoken about a few times at this point as well, and is also a budget request for this season. So all of those things are kind of culminating in this actual establishment of this arts and cultural district. And there's just some few things to meet state statute that we have to do in order to actually establish this in its entirety. So what we have is the current model for the Arts Commission is that we have 11 members. 2 of those members are common council members, 1 from each representative party, if that exists. Council members are allowed to delegate a stand-in that is within their own political party as well. We have 9 residents, and 3 of them serve for 1 year, and then some for 2 years, and the rest for 3 years. So it's kind of creating new and longevity, but also rotating the members out as it goes. They oversee citywide art initiatives. As you are all aware, we've started to invest heavily in the arts in Norwalk. We have installed murals. They have capital requests, which had never happened in the past before. So we're really ramping up everything around the arts in Norwalk, not only just through the commission, but through the Business Development and Tourism Office and through Economic Community Development as well. So their goal is really to serve as stewards for the public art collection and drive forward those arts related projects. And their ordinance that is currently in place dictates all of this jargon for you. And they also operate under a set of bylaws that they adopt themselves to how they review art and those types of things, so that it's all in a policy document. So the proposed model is that instead of having just an arts commission, we would have an arts and cultural commission that will consist of 9 members, 6 that are active in the city's cultural community. So that could be board members of arts institutions, it could be arts administrators, it could be actual artists that own their own studios, it could be theater majors, for example, something like that, somebody who's involved in the actual cultural and arts community in Norwalk. And it doesn't have to be specific to arts, it can be theater, music, innovation, and all of these different things that culminate arts and culture and fall under that umbrella. And then the other 3 have to be resident members, and these are pulled directly from state statute to establish this actual district. But the benefit in this is that a lot of our artists that we have that are popular in Norwalk don't actually live here, they just work here and do business here and on our boards and commissions throughout our arts institution. But in our current ordinance, they're not allowed to be members of the Arts Commission because we have a resident requirement. So a lot of those people that we would like to ask to be on the commission and who would serve really well on the commission are actually, because of the ordinance that's currently in place, not able to do so. So that's the difference between these 2 from the commissioner perspective. We also are setting forth a specific district that will focus on arts and culture. So not only will they oversee the entirety of arts projects that might occur in other areas of the city, but they'll be hyper focused on the arts and cultural district itself. And the benefit of all of this and why it makes sense to designate a specific geography in itself is that an arts and cultural commission, unlike the Arts Commission now, can actually raise funding for themselves. And actually solicit grants for themselves as well. So instead of just always having, an operating budget or capital budget request, they can additionally raise funds not only for events, but for art installations. And they can also apply on behalf of the city and behalf of the commission for grants as well, which doesn't.
Sabrina, how would that work? Would it be a 501c3? Like, where would that money go?
So it would go to the city. It would be in a designated account. And then that money would essentially just have to be used in this specific district, which is if it's not allowed for them to do in state statute as of right now. But now with this additional state statute, if we were to establish this district, it would be allowed under the new regulations.
Okay, and you've spoken finance department, that's all above board and
Yep.
Possible? Okay.
Yep. It would operate similarly to like, we have a blight account, for example, like when they get payments in there, it would be like a separate account where they would operate out of.
Got it. Thank you. Please proceed.
Yeah. So this is just a comparison of both, which I went over already. So as of right now, they just oversee all arts projects. Yes, some of them are focused in the urban core as of, where most people are and where we want those improvements. But it's really being stewards for our entire public art collection. But this new proposal would be that they would continue to do those things, but also hyper focus on the cultural district itself, which we're proposing to be the urban core. And then there's an ordinance change that would need to happen. It would not only follow the state or the city ordinance that we would adopt, but also the state legislation in itself. Josh, do you have a question? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I was waiting for you to finish, but
No, you're fine.
while I'm thinking about ordinances, I know we had an issue that came up relatively recently about acceptance of donated art gifts. I'm wondering about if we do need to do an ordinance that we encompass those issues all in one piece, but I don't know if this is me spitballing right now. I don't know if that's the right answer or not.
It's definitely could be a discussion. I think there's the main purpose of this ordinance that would need to happen is it would need to replace or revise the current Arts Commission ordinance, which essentially is just outlining, how to elect members, how they're appointed, how, the president's selected.
For the
all of
commission
the-
itself, okay.
Yeah, so it might be a little bit separate, but I would think they would be tied in some way for sure.
No, I appreciate it, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. And just like we discussed before, just continuing, there's 11 members on the commission currently. They all have to be residents. The new proposal from the legislation itself is 9, 6 of them from arts organizations, which they could be residents as well. They don't have to not be residents, but we have that option of having non-residents. And then 3 of those members do have to have that resident requirement. The geography, again, they're both going to still be focusing citywide, but they can raise additional funding for the urban core and for programming the urban core for arts and cultural related events. And that's kind of the main difference between the budgetary restrictions that we currently have is that they can only use, city operating and capital. They can't accept donations on the city's behalf. But once the arts and cultural district is established, they can accept funds and get grants and donations specifically for the urban core or that cultural district geography to execute arts related and cultural related projects and events.
If I could, Sabrina, so there won't be council reps on this?
We can certainly put that in the ordinance. The only thing that is required is that we have 6 from an arts organization and 3 residents, but we can add council seats in our specific regulation and ordinance. This is just pulled directly from what their legislation requires. So we can have more, we just can't have less.
I don't want to get too much in the weeds here, but so is 9 the number that they require, or is that just the proposed number?
No, 9 is what they require, and they require 6 from an art related organization and 3 residents.
Great, thanks.
We can say we want 11 like we have now and have those 2 council reps added to it if we wanted to. We just have to meet that 9 requirement.
Gotcha, thanks.
Yep, no problem. So this is the proposed geography. You'll see it overlaps with the enterprise zone and most of the opportunity zone as well, which is essentially all of our urban core. The Wall Street area is the one highlighted in yellow. The green one, I'm sure you are familiar with, is South Norwalk as well. So this is what we would potentially propose as a geography, which would need to get approved separately, which I'll get into a little bit how we would take some next steps on how to do that. But this is what kind of that highlighted yellow box on that other screen was detailing towards. So this is kind of how we would move forward if we decide to. We would have to submit a letter of intent that we want to establish a cultural district, which our Cultural Alliance has been actively involved with helping us set this up, and other municipalities as well. So they're on board with, pushing forward with us, and it makes a lot of sense for us as we already do a lot of components that the Arts and Cultural District does and should be doing. The first thing that we would have to do after submitting that letter is taking a geography back to you folks to decide kind of if this is the whole geography we want, if we want additional parts of the city to be included, if we want the geography to be smaller, any of those things that would come up, that would be kind of the next step to ratify that geography. The third step was that we would have to draft and create an ordinance to modify the Arts Commission ordinance, or alternatively just replace completely the Arts Commission ordinance with an Arts and Cultural Commission ordinance. That would have to have a public hearing as well, which would count as our public hearing on the cultural district itself. So at that ordinance meeting, we would have to have sort of a mini presentation that has all of this information in it for the public to be aware of it all. And then once it goes past that, as you guys all know, after it gets out of your committees, it goes to the full council for approval. And then once that happens, we file a application with the Fairfield County Cultural Alliance, and they pass it through to the state, where they organize a group to come down to Norwalk to visit kind of our cultural district and the art assets that we have in that individual geography. And then after that, it gets approved by DECD, and we can kind of push forward and appoint our members, and we'll have a cultural district. And that is all I have. So if anybody has any additional questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Sabrina, do you mind not sharing your screen so I can see who has a question?
Sure, sorry.
Thank you.
There we go.
Mr. Hewleman, I see you have your hand up.
Thank you, Chairman. I got a couple of questions, Sabrina.
Sure.
First off, are you proposing that we're getting rid of the Arts Commission and just having this commission? Are we spitballing about keeping both? I'm a little confused as to what the
No,
what the
so the
scope is.
The Arts Commission would be replaced with an Arts and Cultural Commission that would oversee both arts and cultural assets of the city. So it wouldn't be, some of the members on the current commission might serve on the Arts and Cultural Commission, but it would serve as a replacement to the Arts Commission because they would be doing the exact same thing.
So ultimately, what you're talking about is it has a dual purpose. It has
Correct.
guidance for this district and guidance for the city as a whole, correct?
Correct. So it's like what the Arts Commission currently does, plus extra hyper focus on that specific district and the ability to raise funds and throw events and have arts related installations specifically for that district that they can solicit other funds for.
No, I remember looking at this probably about 6-8 months ago and having some conversations with some people. My understanding was that it was that the commission was only in control of one area from the statutory standpoint. Is that wrong? I thought the way the statute was written was that it was about the arts and cultural zone that you designate, not about the city as a whole.
So that is true. That's what the actual legislation does dictate, but other municipalities have just taken their arts commissions and just added the cultural district commission to it. And that was the guidance that we got from the Fairfield County Cultural Alliance as well, is that yes, the legislation actually does specify the specific district because you have to have a group to oversee it, number one. And number two, you can only raise funds for that specific area. But you can have your current commission be that conduit to be the board or commission that's overseeing the cultural district.
So the requirements then for that you're proposing here you're talking about people that could sit on boards of museums or any sort of arts related or cultural related organization, not necessarily and don't have to be a resident of the city.
Correct. So 3 of the
Okay.
members do have to be residents, but the other
Right.
6 don't have to be, but they have to sit on a board or commission or be involved in the arts in some way. Like, for example, we can't have Duvian Montoya, who heads up the Norwalk Art Space for us, on our arts commission because he doesn't live in Norwalk. So once we establish an arts and cultural district, people like that will be eligible to be on that commission where they previously weren't before.
But we could, you're, the only requirement statutorily is that 3 people have to be residents. We could weight that differently. We could make it 5-4 or something. We're open to that, or does the statute doesn't strictly define 6-3, correct?
It does define 6-3, but we can add more. We just can't have less.
So it has to be 6 people that are arts oriented,
Yes.
but we could make some of those 6 people residents as well.
Oh, for
is what
sure.
I'm saying statutorily.
Yes.
Okay.
So like
So-
yeah. So for example, if somebody was a Norwalk resident, but also was heavily involved or on the board of the mansion, for example, they would be able to meet both of those requirements. So they
Right.
would
They
either
would
be
meet
it.
both of those requirements. What I'm saying is that we could make 3 of the people, the board people of the 6, we could make the requirement that those also needed to be residents, correct? Is that a
Correct.
part of the statute?
It's not in the statute at all. It just says that they have
So it
to
opens
be-
us up to that possibility.
Yeah,
Okay.
it just says that they have to be affiliated with an arts institution within your municipality.
Right.
Okay.
So
I'm sure
just
I've
to,
got other questions, but I'll let somebody else jump in. Go ahead,
it's
Jess.
Jess, it's Jess. I just want to add one thing. I think the other thing too that we had talked to the Alliance about was that potentially it could be an arts commission, and then a subset of the arts commission could be the subcommittee for the arts and cultural district. Was that true, Sabrina? I feel like that was something that was mentioned to us as well.
It was, but you have to have those specific designated 9 people that are going to be focusing on it.
Right. So your subcommittee would be the 9 people, but your arts commission could potentially be a larger number.
Yes.
Right.
I see Mr. Livingston. Yes, you had your hand up.
Yeah, thanks, John. So Sabrina, David answered some of my questions or asked some of them. So we're talking about arts and cultural district, and you mentioned Lockwood Mansion. So how do you envision that working? Because you're kind of, arts, culture, history. I mean, where do we
Yeah.
draw a line?
Yeah. So well, as we've learned, as we've been getting more funding for the Arts Commission through kind of capital requests and things like that, is that arts and culture are more intertwined than we think. And those institutions also are very heavily involved with artists and people who are very involved in that type of community. It's not only art anymore, it's music, it's history. I know there's not a
Yeah, and
lot
so that gets in the
going
question
on.
I'm
Yeah.
asking is, so it's not just visual arts. It's
No.
so we need to think about that as well as how that works.
Yeah, and I would say there's so for example, on the current Arts Commission, we have Stephen Rust, who is not an artist, but he's a light installation individual. So everything that we've been doing on the commission currently with arts, we have some people who are focused on murals. We have some people who are focused on kind of making sure the state is kind of on par with what we're doing. But then we also have somebody like Stephen who's like, hey, like we need to incorporate lighting into this installation. So all of those different types of professions and backgrounds are actually making a better, actually on the street installation for the people of Norwalk, which I think is kind of where everything's heading, not just for art, but for, things like the NICE Festival, things like around music and culture and history that we have a ton of, but we don't have a commission that's overseeing all of those things at once.
Well, yeah, so that gets, and maybe this is too much in the weeds here. It just gets into like the museums. I mean, they can use money. We have a historical commission, right? I mean, and
Yep.
they maintain, so it's just something we got to think about. Again, I don't want to take too much time here. What's the timing on this? What are your next steps?
Our next step would be to take the geography to you guys. We've spoken with the mayor's office on this as well already, to make sure this is kind of a direction we all want to go. So it would be, if you guys are on board with moving forward, that would be the first thing we would do, is the next meeting that you guys have, propose a geography, and then probably have some meetings offline about the creation of the draft ordinance itself before it comes to the ordinance committee.
Right. Okay, thank you. I want to, I want to talk about that more, about the cultural side, but thanks.
Yeah, for sure.
Ms. Smith?
Yes, thank you, Chair. I just want to express my support for this change. Being married to an artist and seeing a lot of art myself, I mean, I just appreciate, Sabrina, what you're saying about how intertwined culture and art is. And to define a specific district will really allow us to capitalize on, like you're talking about, more grant funding and really creating something special in that area. It's, and I've just for so long thought that, we have these little bits of art and culture around, but there's no real cohesion around it. And, that's a way that we can really celebrate who we are as a city. We celebrate our diversity. I mean, I think about, seeing some of the exhibits I've seen at Art Space. I mean, there's a real celebration of art and culture together there, and they go hand in hand. So I'm just really, really supportive of this. And, I just hope we are able to work out all of the details to move it forward.
Awesome. Thank you.
Sabrina, can I ask a question? Or Chairman Keides, can I ask a question? One of the things that I think we need to think of is that when Sabrina and I talked with David Green from the Alliance, his recommendation to us was that a Norwalk district should be, first of all, our question was, isn't Norwalk just so great as the city as a whole? Can we make the whole entire city a district? And the answer was no, you need to have designated areas that are districts and they should be walkable. And so we were thinking the urban core as a geography that we could start with. But the answer that was given to us was that the city is more than welcome to introduce as many districts as we would like. So we were talking about, for example, Gallagher Mansion and some of the other areas that are around the city that may not be adjacent to or congruent to the urban core area. So I think the other piece on geography that would be good to talk about is if we would look to adopt the urban core initially and then come back and look at different geographies, or if we should be a little bit more aggressive the first time around and look at the urban core in addition to other geographies as the district that we want to pass. And so I put that out to the committee just as a discussion point and thinking about the geography that we would like the city to adopt.
Mr. Goldstein.
Thank you, Chairman Keides. And I think what Barbara and everyone else said, I mean, it's right. I mean, I think this is a welcome change, especially considering the prevalence of arts and culture is hand in hand with the prosperity and, ultimately success of a thriving city. The one thing that I'm wondering is, I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the underlying statute that we'd be doing this under was passed, 4 or 5 years ago? I'm wondering if there are other cities that are comparable to Norwalk in Connecticut that have done this well, because I think that it would be nice if, and I just didn't hear it in the presentation, if there are models of people who've done it well and maybe people who did it in a way that maybe wouldn't work for us. So I would want to get a sense of what, some models and samples are here. But I also think that I think that if we're thinking about reconstituting the commission, I also want to be mindful of the fact that I think that the commission should maintain or we should be cognizant of both professional diversity, but also diversity in every aspect, especially age. There are a lot of younger artists in the city, and making sure that they're represented on this commission, I think should be an important city priority.
Awesome. And then I do have examples that David Green has provided to us. So if you'd like to see them, I can shoot them over to you for sure.
Yeah, I mean, especially if there are other cities that have tried stuff and maybe things haven't worked, like good to know that now, as opposed to falling on our face, yeah, making the same mistakes. Let's make different mistakes.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
It's good advice, Josh. Learn from someone else's mistakes. Mr. Hewlin.
Thank you, Chairman. I just had one more thing. I just want to know, can we sort of see a layout of what the action items are on this, what it is that we need to do and in what order that we need to do them in? I mean, the question about how it needs to go through ordinance, how the public hearing has to go, what that would play out as a timeline for getting this done. Because I think this is a fabulous idea, Sabrina. I think it's it's what Norwalk needs. I've talked to a couple of the other communities. I think it was, God, I can't remember who I spoke to about this, about, like I said, 6-8 months ago. And I think this is a really valuable tool in the arsenal for Norwalk, but also it's such a, it's an enrichment of who we are. And I think that's important, but I'd love to see what the action items are so we can start thinking and getting this done.
Yeah, so the first step is going to be to ratify a geography selection, which would be through this committee, which we can do the next meeting. And then the second part is going to be the ordinance committee meeting, which will have the draft ordinance, which would need to be accepted through committee. And then at that meeting as well, probably the first or second meeting, depending how the draft is and how it goes through ordinance, that's when we'll have a public hearing at that meeting on the cultural district. And then it would go to full council simultaneously after that, once it made it through committee. And then after that, they've been scheduling the meetings to come to see the cultural district almost like a week after they get the notification letter. So that would be really quick after that fact. And then it would be approved by the state after the conclusion of them touring the district itself.
And is there, I think it was Middletown that I talked to about it, and I mean, they launched it and it's done very well for them. But I was wondering, is there anything like, bringing someone from the state arts, the commission to come down and maybe do a presentation and sort of a larger sweeping what this has done for other communities, and that, is there a possibility of doing that?
Yeah, I can certainly ask, and I can ask David Green as well. He's like very involved hands-on with this. So I'll ask him if he has a recommendation or if he wants to come do a presentation. I'm happy to do that.
Okay, that's something, possibility, putting a meeting together. Great, thank you.
For sure, no problem. And just so you're aware, that tour meeting where they do come, the state delegation is there. So it's like the arts and cultural office, like the Connecticut Office of the Arts, they come and they tour everything with David Green and with staff.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
No problem.
Okay. I'll be discussion. Anybody else have any questions? All right, seeing none, thank you all. This is a quick meeting, kind of like ease you all back into the swing of things. And if there's nothing else, I will now call for a motion to adjourn. All right, Mr. Lewison, all in favor? All right, everyone enjoy the rest of your night.
All right, good night.
Thanks, John.
Good
Good
night.
night, everyone.